Hey, sports card fans, it's John, Wade Boggs fan. Hope you're all doing well. This past weekend, I had an opportunity to attend the Pittsburgh Card Show. I was able to attend on this Saturday. If you did not see my recap video, I will have a link to that at the end of this video. When I went to the show, I did not have any particular cards in mind that I was looking for. You never know what there's going to be at any particular show. I also did not know how many dealers would be selling vintage cards. So I basically just went for the experience, got to hang out with some fellow YouTubers. But when I noticed that a lot of the tables, a good number, had vintage, I was hopeful that I'd be able to find at least something to purchase there. And I did show off one of the cards that I purchased in my recap video, but I saved the larger purchase for this video. There were a few cards that I could have added to my collection with the amount of money that I brought. But there was one particular dealer that had two cards that caught my attention. It just happened to be a dealer that I saw at the National last year, and I think in prior Nationals as well, but I remember it specifically last year. He had a lot of binders of cards and commons, and I picked up a good number of 1978 Topps raw cards for my set that I am building. So I remembered him explaining that, yeah, I picked up some 78s, checked to, see if he was going to the National, and he is. And he's going to have a fresh, well, not completely fresh, but updated 78 card. So we chatted a little bit, and I noticed two cards in his display case. He didn't have a lot of graded vintage. One of the cards that caught my eye was a 1964 Topps Hank Aaron, and that card just happens to be in my list of 100 cards for $100,000. And then I saw another card, which also happened to be on my 100 card for cards for $100,000 list. So I was debating between the two of them. Kept walking around a little bit, seeing some other, see if anything else caught my eye, but I kept going back to these two particular cards. The more I looked at the 64 Topps card, I started leaning a little bit against it. If you've been following my channel, you know pretty much what I look for in terms of vintage cards. The number one thing I look for is centering. It doesn't have to be perfect, but if it's really off center, left to right, or top to bottom, or both, that's the first thing that I notice in a card, and it sort of turns me off. So centering somewhat key. Then on a lesser scale, it's the corners, the edges, and the surface. Pretty much for me, if I look at a card and I like the overall eye appeal to it, again, doesn't have to be perfect. It's a card that I would want to have in my collection. And that 64 Topps Aaron was just a little too far off left to right on the centering. The more I looked at it, I kept noticing that. So I still didn't pull the trigger on this other card, and you'll see why. There was one thing initially that thought might concern me in terms of the eye appeal of the card. So again, kept looking around, but nothing else spoke to me. I don't know if you've been to a show or maybe even looked at a card, online on eBay or some auction house, that you look at a card and it speaks to you and you say, I want to have that card for whatever reason. Again, kept looking around, and my thoughts kept going back to that card. And that sort of told me that, John, yeah, you should pick this card up, because if you're still thinking about it as you're walking around the show, seeing other cards, other potential cards that you could buy, and you didn't see anything else that wowed you to say, oh yeah, no, I don't want that one. I want, this other card. Just didn't happen for me. Now, I didn't have to spend this money at the show. I did not have to buy this card. But again, the more I looked at it, in fact, it was also, um, this card is the first card I have of this particular set. So I didn't even own a card from this set, let alone being on my 100 cards for $100,000 list. So when you first take a look at the card, when I show it off, you're probably going to know why I had some initial doubts on the card, but overall, I love it. I'm really glad I have it as part of my collection. Plus, another factor that played into it, and again, if you've been watching my channel, you know that I look for bargains. I look for cards that I can buy as cheaply as possible. I don't have a large budget, so I like to stretch it out as much as possible. Now, the card in this particular grade, the average price has been around $300. And I had about $200 to spend after I got the other card. A PSA 4, the average price of that card sells for $210. The dealer had this card listed for $225 in a PSA 5. So he had it priced just above a PSA 4. And I thought I could get him down to 200, right at basically the remaining money that I had. I just had a feeling I could, get him a little bit lower on it, especially once I took a closer look at the card. And turns out I was able to get the card for $200. So I paid $200 for a PSA 5 copy that typically sells, again, on average, and not every 5 is the same. As we know in the vintage world, not every 5 or 4 looks the same. But other 5s in varying eye appeals, like I said, have sold for an average of $295 recently. And I was able to pick this one up for $200. And in fact, in doing some research after I purchased the card, I found out that the exact same card, same serial number, same card, last sold in August of 2020 for $175. So considering what's gone on in the last pretty much 2 years, the ups and slightly downs and so on, I didn't pay much more than what that card sold for 2 years ago. So that made me feel good as well. I think the dealer was fair in his initial asking price. He wasn't asking for a full 5 value because, again, you'll see there's a slight issue with the card, but overall, I really, really like it. So I'm going to end the suspense now. I'm going to turn the camera around and show you off my latest card, card number 16 on my 100 cards for $100,000. So without any further ado, I present the 1949 Bowman Warren Spahn. The more I look at this card, the more I love it. The centering's not perfect, but it's pretty good centering. Again, given a 5. There is some corner wear down in the bottom left-right corner, again, which contributes to a 5. The registration is really good. I think for some of these 49 Bowmans, you can get the registration off a little bit. Now, you're probably saying, yeah, John, you have so far overlooked the big flaw in the card. And yes, there is some discoloration there in the red background. But you know what? The more I look at it, I just noticed the image, the centering, the overall eye appeal to the card to me is one that I like. The more I look at this card, the more I'm glad that I bought it. And that's the main thing. The mark there may have turned off other collectors. Again, I think the dealer noted that there was an imperfection in this card, even though it has a technical grade of a 5, and sold it, I think, maybe appropriately. So again, in terms of other 5s, looks like I got a bargain compared to where this card sold 2 years ago. Paid a little bit more for it than it sold for 2 years ago. But again, I am very happy with this card. And check out the back. There's a little mark there to the left of Warren Spahn. And you can see, on those bottom corners there, you got some creasing again, which again, it's not a perfect card. It's a 5, or some may even say maybe overgraded and should have been a 4. Whatever the case, it's not going to be a perfect card. But overall, the back is nice and clean. You don't have any wax or gum stains. I'm not sure if there was gum in 49 Bowman, but at least if anything, there's no wax stain. So overall, really nice card. Very pleased to have this. Warren Spahn. I have a few of his cards now. Would be nice if I could do a little run of his cards. I love his Bowman cards. Just amazing. So yeah, with this one here, this is card number 16. So the budget that I had set aside for these 16 cards that I've acquired so far would have cost me $2,075. So far, for those 16 cards, I have only spent $1,870. So I'm $205 under budget. Now, to be fair, a couple cards, like the 1950 Bowman Yogi Berra card, I dropped down, in that case, I dropped down 2 grades, and so saved some money doing that. I did have this Warren Spahn on my list at a 5, and I had budgeted $300. So by spending $200, I, again, saved $100 on that budget. So I don't want to call it cheating, but there were a couple cards that I was able to get at a lower grade and save money, and still have a very nice eye-appealing card to add to my collection. And this Warren Spahn just adds to it there. So there you have it. We'd love to know what your thoughts are on this card. Would this be a card that you would buy given that imperfection? You wouldn't offend me if you say that you wouldn't buy the card. I think it gives it just a unique look. I know a lot of people, vintage collectors out there, love beat up cards because they sort of tell a story. Now, I don't know if this came from the factory that way, or whether something got on it. It does not look like, I tried to look up really close. It doesn't look like it was handwriting or someone tried to erase something. It was just maybe in the printing process, was just a little discoloration. But overall, I am very, very, very happy to have this as part of my collection. So with that, that's all I have for you. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.